data centers on the moon. So this is not a spoof. Well, I have this goofy grin on my face because I'm thinking of the people who ride bikes and mountains to get outdated information and data, in government systems.
Yeah,
and now we're talking about super sophisticated stuff based on the moon. Okay.
How's my portfolio doing? We're going to the moon.
Welcome to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. David, before we get to the news, a chaser on our night at Memorial, the Memorial Stadium event. I know we talked about this before, but I found out that there was a grandmother there who was so excited. I'm on the field. I'm at Memorial Stadium. She FaceTimed her grandson. He was at his cousin's birthday party. And she said, "Can you see? I'm on the stadium." "Oh, that's cool, Grandma. Yeah. Would you like to meet some Huskers?" "What?" And she swings her phone around. Shannon's got the B-roll playing behind us there for those watching on YouTube. And there's Caleb Benning, Emmett Johnson, Luke Lindemeyer, Connor Booth, and Carter Nelson were the players who joined us. Anyway, we had 5 players who joined us, and they're wishing the cousin a happy birthday. I guess, the kids on the other end of the phone, the kids at the birthday party, they're all gathering around. What? What's this? It was just... I was so impressed. The players really represented the program well. They were
they were phenomenal.
They were engaging.
All 5 young men were phenomenal. EJ or Emmett Johnson, he's like, "Hey, give me your number." So we swapped contact, and we've actually texted a few times back and forth. I am going to invite him to come on the show. I just want to make sure I don't get him in any hot water. But I thought, it'd be fun is we do our picks on the Husker season, but let's get him to pick maybe some stocks. We'll have him come on, and we'll track him along the season and just see how he does, what have you. So he said he might be open to that. So we'll see.
We'll have some Emmett Johnson futures, 1,000 yards rushing, 500 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns maybe. We'll see. Actually, speaking of Emmett Johnson, you just reminded me, we had a client there celebrating his 72nd birthday. So he's got 3 generations of his family there. Now, we had several hundred people, milling around, and the football players are in the midst of him. So the guy was a little sheepish. Well, I don't want to pull him away, but he went up to Emmett Johnson and said, "I'm celebrating my birthday, and there are 13 of us here." Before he could finish the pitch, Emmett says, "Where are they? Let's go!" And he just dives in, and pictures and autographs and things. And
the feedback was phenomenal from the event.
It really was fantastic. All right, into the news we go, David. Speaking of chasers, here's a chaser on the big beautiful bill. The headlines from CNBC. Trump's big, beautiful bill could deliver 45.5% salt torpedo for high earners, Tax Pros says. All right, let's unpack this SALT, of course, state and local taxes, the deduction that I despise on your federal income taxes for what you pay in state and local taxes. But what is this torpedo?
So there's a phase out, and it's an accelerated phase out for those that earn, and it doesn't matter if you're single or married. If your modified adjusted gross income goes over $500,000, so think lawyers, doctors, business owners, etc., the phase out. So right now you can deduct, Chip, instead of $10,000, now it's up to $40,000, and it starts this year, so you don't have to wait till next year. So your property tax, your income tax in the state of Nebraska, you get to deduct all that, your state and local taxes, off of your federal income tax. Now this heavily favors people that live in bluer states, we'll call it, right? That have very high income taxes like New Jersey and California, and also high property taxes, because now they can deduct $40,000 of what they pay to the state government off of their federal income tax, which means now they were getting $10,000, so that $30,000 they're not paying tax on, Chip. Who's paying that bill?
Well, that goes to the rest of us.
All of us, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I don't like this.
And if you don't, so
the
this
fiscally irresponsible states are rewarded. Don't worry about it. We're gouging you, but it'll all come off your federal taxes.
By the blue votes, even though they didn't really vote for the bill because of the politics of it. Yeah. This was lobbied very heavily from bluer states. But here's the thing. It's a regressive tax, right? Because you're penalizing the lower income people that do not have state and local income tax of $40,000. So again, it's just anyway. So here's the thing, though. If you happen to be blessed and are a high income earner, I have this problem, all right? If you want to call it a problem, first world problem. But I will not get the best because my income goes past the other side of the threshold. So once you go past $600,000, you're simply capped at the $10,000 deduction we had before, so you don't get any net benefit. But the torpedo that we're talking about, Chip, is if somebody was earning exactly $600,000, a married couple or a single person, instead of the $40,000 deduction that they would have had, once they got to $500,000, it starts to wind its way down to just $10,000. So that extra $100,000, their effective tax rate is 45.5%.
So there's a window in there from 500,000 to 600,000.
Yeah, their effective tax rate would be about 30% below that number, and then it's going to jump. So the point being is, if you can plan your income,
are there strategies you can employ?
Oh, absolutely, we can do this at this year. But let's just say, like, I literally was talking to a dentist who has a very good practice going and is making around $650,000 a year. But he's working more than he wanted to work. Well, this may incentivize him to close his office one day a week and actually cut his revenue by about 20%, because for that extra $100,000 in revenue or income he's generating, he's having to work 20% more than he wants to, and he would only be giving up a net $55,000 of the $100,000 in income if he only wanted to make $500,000 and do it in 4 days if he could. In other words, you really need to be proactive in planning this out. And who can control their income, Chip? Well, people that can afford good tax professionals and tax planners, things that we can offer, but also entrepreneurs, because they can do what we call shift income. We can push income out, or we can pull it forward to get you into the sweet spot of your tax liability. And the same is true when it comes to doing things like Roth conversions for baby boomers that are already retired. It may change the calculation. So again, doing this stuff is not for the faint of heart. You need to work with qualified people that understand all the ins and outs, especially with the new Big Beautiful Bill, as it's called. We are sending a video out and getting it recorded in the next week or so to all of our clients, letting them know some, the basic opportunities that are there, both for entrepreneurs and for retirees.
Boy, this is an example of where professional guidance can really help. As you often say, you don't know what you don't know. And so, all right, well, I don't like the policy, but those of you who can benefit from it, I don't begrudge you that, and I don't want people to get torpedoed in a certain window there. So definitely check that out. Take some proactive measures to avoid the torpedo. All right, David, let's stay with CNBC for a moment. You sent around a survey that was published on top states for business. It's got about a dozen different categories. One of them was quality of life. And the headline on the feature on that was, these 10 states are America's best for quality of life in 2025. Well, right there in a three-way tie for 8th place with Virginia, and I forget which other one, is Nebraska. Nebraska, Virginia, and Massachusetts, all tied for 8th. And then it was a very heavily New England list the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think Vermont was number one on the list,
Vermont was a clear number one. New Hampshire was in
Ironically, they finished the list, and then they just published an article this morning on the 10 worst states quality of life, and they ranked Tennessee dead last, which I found ironic.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Is there some regional bias there?
Yeah, and it was. And it was all the southern, Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee. They're all on the bottom 10. And so like you said, we went and looked inside. Well, what did they rank this on? Air quality, access to healthcare, including some healthcare you and I don't think are really healthcare. But anyway, so
crime rates, education.
But crime rate is what got Nebraska really ranked well.
Yes.
Our air quality and crime rate we scored very well on. We had very low violent crimes per capita compared to most states, and so that was a good thing. But anyway, it's always nice this time of year. You always seem to get these surveys that come out from various entities. The CNBC does them every year. NerdWallet does several. We try to publish them here when we get them. But we also the CNBC did do the top states for business, and that's the one I want to focus on because we were in the top 15. In fact, we were number 15.
That list was more, that moved more to the Midwest and the South. North Carolina, Texas, Florida, Virginia, and Ohio. There's your top 5. Michigan, Georgia. There's Tennessee at number 8 for overall top state for business. Indiana and Minnesota, that rounds out the top 10. As you said, we were 15th. I think I see Iowa at 24 there, so at least in the top half. So on the broader index, on the broader measure, maybe those were some of the names, some of the states we would expect to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so the top states on the business side are very friendly on the tax standpoint, especially to corporate America, and they have incentives to bring there. But the other thing they're looking for is your employment pool, which we have low unemployment here in Nebraska. Wages are above the mean. and you've got a good quality of life for the employees of the companies that want to set up shop and grow like we've done here. So, but anyway, it's a great to get us ranked well in a couple of great surveys.
David, Fox Business headline says inflation accelerated in June as the Fed weighs the impact of tariffs in rate cut timing. Now, I've seen commentary that says, oh, the chickens are coming home to roost now on inflation from these tariffs. And I've seen other commentary that says, hey, everybody slow down. That's not what's happening. What do you see happening?
Well, the irony of all ironies is Jerome Powell used the word transitory on the the non-inflation is transitory. Oh, it's coming. Remember the transitory inflation on the other side.
Right.
Almost 3 years ago, we started calling them out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're data dependent, well, inflation's at 2.7%. And that's the headline, right, on the number of month. But if you look at the 3-run rolling, we're at 2.4, then they should be cutting rates. And if inflation does show up later, as they're telling us with transitory, then they can raise rates if they're, in fact, data dependent. So they are being a little bit of crybabies here and try to run, and they just don't like being told what to do from Trump, who's now trying to put the political pressure and the media pressure on them for doing so. But inflation is not caused by tariffs. Again, they run out economists who are Keynesian and don't understand math or study it. Tariffs actually are deflationary in history longer term. They drive prices down. What creates inflation has always been, always will be, is M2. That's money supply. How much money's floating in the system. And that's the only reason you're going to see inflation is if we start printing money again.
Up next, we have had a Lincoln office up and running since March, and business is booming. The man who leads that office joins us next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Tom Osborne helped us open our Lincoln office in March, and business has been booming. The man leading the Lincoln office joins us today for his first appearance on our radio show. David, please welcome financial advisor Darrin Worthington.
Hey, thank you, Chip. Yeah, so joining me for the first time in the studio, at least on this side of the camera, he's been in here before, Darrin Worthington, one of our financial advisors. Darrin, how we doing, bud?
Doing great, David.
So this is your first time being on the show, so we always like to kind of do a little introduction to our listening audience. We've got faithful listeners for almost 8 years now, so we would like to just introduce you to them. You've been in the financial services for many years. We were introduced a couple years back through a mutual friend who's in the industry, and you lived out in Denver. And you actually, I think we met. I was the keynote speaker, I believe, right? At a conference, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then, I don't know, maybe it was 8 months, 9 months later, you ended up right here at our tax mastermind, which we actually have coming up here in about 3 weeks. We're doing one of our 2 annual tax masterminds. This is where advisors like you, we charge you some money, but you come in and learn, we call it a little heavy-handed dose of tax planning strategies. Talk about that experience for you when you first came to that, like drinking from the fire hose, as everyone always says, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's obviously a lot to learn. And one of the things that you say is, people just don't know what they don't know. And even as an advisor, there are many parts of tax planning, especially if we're being proactive, that we're not exposed to on a daily basis. But here at Retire Smart, we do talk about these things on an ongoing basis, so they're really top of mind.
What's the number one bill? The client's face, right?
That's for sure.
So, but anyway, long story short on your background, you went back, started implementing some of this stuff in there, and then we're, calling, asking some great follow-up questions. We have a group that we help coach and what have you, and lo and behold, you're like, well, would you ever consider just coming out and opening a branch in Denver? And we actually, someday maybe, but not right now. And you just happen to have a son who lives, that's our irony, is your son lives, I think, less than a mile from me. Your son is literally just down the street from me. And you have family here in town, and you're like, well, what if I was willing to maybe just move back there? Is there a spot for me at the inn? So I was like, well, what do you think about Lincoln?
Yeah, it's just amazing how things work out. Sometimes I had been following you, through your podcast and through the radio show for a while, and the message that you delivered just really resonated with me. I align with a lot of your philosophies around holistic and proactive planning, especially in the 5 key areas that we focus on with the SMART plan. But getting to work with you and the broader team to develop my expertise around tax was something that was really attractive to me for sure.
Well, I think it's awesome. You've been ingratiated with the team. The team loves having you on board, and you hit the ground running several months back in our Lincoln office after we opened it up. In fact, you and I were just talking before we went to start recording this week's show is you're meeting with a very nice high net worth client this afternoon, and you're taking one of our CPAs down there, Evan Marshall, CPA and certified exit planner. This high net worth individual client, somebody that I've met with before as well. And they have a business that was sold. They have some large assets that need to be sold, some real estate holdings, things like that. And so that's what's unique is we have this collaborative approach where you can bring in a whole team. We even have an attorney on site that can get involved. So having a CPA, attorneys, and well-trained advisors collaborating on the client's behalf, especially higher net worth clients, it just gets better outcomes, at least in my years of doing this. And so we're just excited to have you on the team. So
yeah, no, and I'm super excited to be able to plug into the team because most traditional advisors today, they might do a little tax prep with coordination from a CPA, but very few are doing proactive tax planning or ongoing tax management like we do. I mean, it's an ongoing thing that we do from one year to the next because things are always changing, as you know.
And to your point, even somebody like yourself who is always, since I've known you, been going to conferences, getting knowledge, you educate yourself, you invest in yourself. And I think that's the mistake a lot of advisors make is they stop spending on their own education just because they're in the business. You've got to constantly upgrade your own education in I do it in all kinds of areas, but when you're out there on that island, it's hard to implement when you don't have the sounding board. And, I think one of the things, the coolest things you had talked about is our Friday afternoons, how we spend them. Talk about what Friday afternoon looks like here for all the advisors on our team.
Yeah, Friday afternoons are very unique here. Incredibly educational. We spend
Number one, we're actually working still.
we are definitely working. We're working hard all the time. But on those Friday afternoons, what we do is our case prep time is where lead advisors will present upcoming cases to the broader group. The way I compare this, an analogy that I use is I worked in the medical space for a very long time. And once a month, the entire hospital will get together for something called grand rounds, where one physician will present a case and walk the entire hospital through that case from beginning to end. We do things like that every week here to just sharpen one another and make sure that we are delivering the best strategies possible.
Oh, and it helps
clients.
when we have several younger advisors who, just out of college, et cetera. And they get the education and the volume experience that would take a seasoned advisor of probably 15 years to acquire, and they get it rather quickly. So yeah, I think it's just fantastic they were able to do that. So what's been your favorite part of joining the team? What do you think?
There's so many different things. I think the fact that there is this broader team, not just the advisors, but we have really a very strong support staff as well that helps us to be able to focus, on our clients and being in those conference rooms and delivering the best advice. Plus all the other support that we have from the admin side of things. It just allows us to stay locked and focused on what we do best.
Well, speaking of focusing, we believe in the team approach, and we talk about it here on the show all the time. We have each of the advisors, we kind of ask them to really become, our resident authority in different areas. And you've taken up long-term care and we'll have some classes coming up on that as well. We'll be launching in the near future. I think that's what's so cool is someone down the hall. You were walking down the hall the other day talking with one of our Social Security specialists in one of your cases. Somebody else was walking down the hall asking somebody else an estate planning question. And, we have this collaborative spirit. And so having these different experts, and it's great because your clients get to come to any one of these classes, over 100 of them this year. That's a lot of fun, right? And teaching like that.
It is a lot of fun. Being able to educate people on these topics that they just don't have a lot of access to. Unfortunately, here in the U.S., there's just not a lot around financial literacy. And, on the topic of long-term care, when I first joined Retire Smart, one of the things that was really eye-opening to me is I came to a class called Smart Spend Down Solutions. And we had an expert by the name of Michael Luna come in and talk about Medicaid strategies and how clients can potentially navigate and maneuver, that scenario.
Avoiding the 5-year look back and not having to spend all their parents' assets or their own assets down if they're in nursing home care or something similar. And that's just it. It's this education. And I think it was your ex-wife's parents needed the planning instantly and it was able to help them, get a better outcome. So, that's awesome. So, hey, we're running out of time for this first segment. We look forward to hosting your first class, but you are hosting an event for us Monday night, right? We have a movie in Lincoln that you're going to be hosting there. So where is the movie at and what time is that?
Yeah, we're really excited about this movie. It's The Psychology of Retirement. It's at the Edgewood Cinema, and it will be starting at 6:30 p.m. We're going to have a whole team of people out there to help serve the people that are in attendance. And what's really exciting about this, David, is Paul Ferguson, another advisor who I work with very closely in the Lincoln office. We are opening our calendar up for the next 10 days after that event so that we can help serve people, who are concerned about these 5 areas of retirement.
No, that's fantastic. And the documentary just does a great job explaining the pitfalls. It follows about 6 different baby boomers through kind of what their fears are. And it's a really well done, no obligation. You can attend the movie. You just have to get registered for it. So you can call the office or go to the event page and get registered for that. It's going to be Monday night, July 21st at 6:30 p.m. at the Edgewood Cinema in Lincoln. All right, Darrin, thank you so much for stopping by the studio this week.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Chip, what do we have next?
Up next, you have questions. David Brooks has answers. Q&A is next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Into the Q&A we go, David. The first question is about health savings accounts. Several people have urged me to get an HSA. I'm not sure if I see the value. It won't reduce the cost of my insurance or health care. What's the big deal about HSAs? Well, David, you and Darrin Worthington were just talking about tax planning. Is this the one that you like to say it's triple tax-free, this account?
Yes, but I want to correct the questioner saying it won't reduce the cost of my insurance. I would argue that's absolutely not true. It does, in fact. The reason it does is because it's putting more of the onus on you, the consumer. And that's one of the reasons they're so popular for businesses to offer, because it's typically a larger deductible for you, the person under the insurance, which means the premium goes down. So it's less cost for the insurance, which means you pay less through payroll deduction or directly if you're buying this policy on your own. But you do typically have a larger out-of-pocket expenditure. In other words, you have to have at least a $2,500 deductible to qualify. Because to open a health savings account, and again, I've been legislating or arguing legislatures to do away with this. Let everybody have one of these. We want you to save for healthcare. That would help save Medicare and Medicaid. Again, logic and reason. But anyway, but you have to have a high deductible qualified plan to partner it with an HSA, health savings account.
But that creates a disciplinary effect in that, you're not going to be willy-nilly in your health care. You're
right,
going to be very
because we want to put the onus on
selective.
you. If you're going to be more selective on the first $2,500 or $5,000 out of pocket every year, you're going to be really wise, with how you spend the dollars. But to quickly cover the tax bit, yes, you put money into an HSA. It goes in tax deferred, so you get to write that off of your income, just like you're putting money into like a traditional IRA. It then grows. You can invest it. It grows tax deferred. And if you take it out once you're retired, you don't have to wait till you're retired, by the way. You can take it at any time. But if you want to let it grow for retirement, you can. But if you take it out for a qualifying expense, which is your medical expenses, et cetera, and your Medicare Part B and Part D deductibles when you are on Medicare will qualify for this, all that money can come out 100% tax-free. It's the only triple tax-free account in America.
Client relations. That's the next question. How often do you meet with clients? I don't really have any complaints with our current advisor, but it seems like we had intense interaction a few years ago when we set up our account, but not much since, and not much activity, even in turbulent markets. Is that standard? Not at Retire Smart, David.
Well, not here, but is it standard? Sadly, yes.
Okay.
That is very realistic of what you get at a lot of firms. In fact, we had somebody that was referred to the Husker Night that came up to me and introduced themselves. Hey, we're a big fan. They've been listening to you and I for many years on the radio, and they happen to be clients of a firm that has a radio show in one of our marketplaces as well. And they were like, well, we don't want to tell you who we're with, but it's a really boring radio show. So I kind of, it's like I took a shot in the dark and said a name. He goes, yeah, how'd you know? But anyway, But they asked that. They went through that same thing. It seemed like a lot of love for about 3 weeks and then crickets in 4 years. And I was like, well, what about your annual review? Well, we don't do them. We've done one, and we did it about 3 years after we signed up, and we called for it.
Goodness.
And I'm like, well, that's not really doing what we call the fiduciary standard, right?
Yeah.
So, but the cadence depends upon the client here. We specifically tailor the plan to the client, but most clients are going to have 4 to 6 meetings in the first 12 to 18 months. So it's a lot because there's more work when you're setting up the plan. But from there, it typically breaks down to 1 typical formal review a year, sometimes 2 formal reviews a year, depending on the breadth and scope of the plan. And then we invite clients to educational events in between. We have touch points in between, phone calls scheduled, et cetera. So yeah, you should have some regular cadence, but we have some clients that don't want to come in that often, and we want to tailor the planning process to the client.
Sure.
And everybody has different needs depending on their age and what have you. And that's why we don't have the same exact fee schedule for every client, because the breadth and scope of the work provided will vary greatly.
Boy,
but it is all tailored.
But you have to have the regular contact because there are so many scenarios, so many transactions. You've got to plan for them ahead of time, 6 months or a year ahead. You've got to be looking ahead and getting things in position. There are certain windows for certain transactions.
Right.
And if
and
you
so
miss them, you
we
miss them.
automatically know to invite people when they turn 64 into the Medicare classes that year, because they're going to have to make a decision before their next birthday. We automatically know to talk to people at 62 for Social Security. Most of the time we're not recommending you turn it on, but that's your first option, and we can have that discussion if you haven't already had it with your advisor. 59 and a half, 60, 63. These are all red letter ages, 70, 72, 73, 75, all red letter ages depending upon what year you're born, et cetera.
That's another thing. When you offer 120 or 130 classes and events to your clients and the public, that also helps keep the contact regular, I guess, as well. Yeah, that should be a red flag if you've got an advisor who's just on automatic pilot and isn't engaging. All right, David, next question is about what's known as the 401k hardship distribution. I have been hit with unexpected medical problems and expenses. I'm not yet eligible to withdraw from my 401k, but someone told me I should try for a hardship distribution. What do you think of that idea?
Well, typically we believe it's a bad idea, but we understand sometimes it's the last resort when you have to take a distribution out because of an unforeseen expense.
Well, first of all, define it for us, and then tell us what you think the problem is.
Well, so someone may have an unexpected medical bill.
Okay.
The car breaks down, the furnace goes out, and you spend thousands of dollars unexpectedly, and you end up having to put it on the credit card, and you don't have the means to maybe pay that back off, or you just don't even have the credit available, and you need the capital to take care of something that's a priority issue. So when you take a hardship withdrawal, if you qualify for it, you're going to pay taxes on it, and you're going to pay a penalty, a 10% early distribution penalty. So most 401ks offer a loan. Again, we'd be very cautious before recommending you do it, but you may be able to borrow against that balance. That's not a taxable event, Chip, and you could pay it back through a payroll deduction. Now, some companies will offer you a loan outside of the 401k. We have what we call the Smart Cares program here. We offer a small loan to employees that have been tenured at certain amounts. If they get themselves into a bind, we can give them a short-term loan to help them through tough situations. Because listen, this stuff happens. We've all been there where, you have an unexpected expense. However, I would just tell people, typically taking the hardship withdrawal is a last resort, in my opinion, because you're going to stop the power of compounding and growing for dollars in retirement. No one's going to loan you money for your retirement. However, there are typically a myriad of ways you can borrow money: credit cards, home equity lines of credit, family, friends, et cetera, or even, your employer may offer some form of loan program like we do here for our employees if needed. But just talk with a competent professional and make sure you understand all the ins and outs before you go reach into that bag, because it could be painful, and then you stop the power of compounding. And I have no idea how old our questioner is, but that could be 20 or 30 years of compounding. If you took $5,000 out, that could turn into $50,000 in your retirement, and people don't think about the future value of those dollars. So just tread cautiously.
Up next, your box of cornflakes is under new ownership. We'll tell you about it next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, Well, David, I do want to get to that Kellogg story because that affects a lot of people locally. But actually, I want to squeeze in two items we didn't get to in the first segment, and you thought they were important enough to bring them to the attention of the team. One is we've been tracking this over the last few years, and there was another dramatic urban real estate fact that emerged. You sent an image of two Denver office towers that are now, am I looking at this right, $3 per square foot?
Yeah, the two towers sold for a collective $3.2 million. I mean, those two high-rise buildings.
That's
sold,
like fire sale, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And frankly, I'd buy them for that price if I'd have been offered the opportunity but that's how desperate some of the banks that hold the mortgages on these properties are. They have to unload these toxic assets before we end up with another TARP, if you will, toxic asset program from the Fed. So all is not well on the real estate front. We've been talking about that for a while, and our economy, is plugging along right now. But there's a lot of underlying things that we need to be really concerned about, and commercial real estate is a significant piece of that. Because what bank wrote that down, I don't have the information for you today, but this is happening all across the country. We're certainly not seeing reported all of it, but we're now seeing residential housing slow down, and it's gotten prices are negative in 23 of the top 30 markets across the country. So I told you at the beginning of the year I thought real estate would go backwards this year, and it appears to be coming true. So maybe the great Karnak is still alive. I don't know. And of course, we had the bacon futures that came out of that too, right?
Okay. Well, speaking of real estate and speaking of future markets, and you sent me this headline, and I first thought, okay, are we looking at the Onion or the Babylon Bee here or something? No, we're looking at CNBC. The next frontier in real estate, data centers on the moon and space support infrastructure. So this is not a spoof. Well, we just had Darrin Worthington on in the Lincoln office. Like maybe he retires first. It was Lincoln, or maybe should we be looking at the moon for our next outlet?
Well, I will tell you what they're doing is because the idea is that they would not need the same energy or cooling, right? These data centers, right? These big server farms, we have them all over here in Silicon Prairie, right? Down south of town, you can see them. North of town, east of town. And look at just the cooling units, the chillers they have on these facilities because they have to keep these servers cold. Well, imagine they could build unlimited data centers on the surface of the moon. And they've literally planned all this out. And so if they could do that, then they would just beam signals back and forth, right, via satellite. But you would store the data, every time somebody takes a picture with their smartphone, which is about every 4 seconds these days, that has to be stored somewhere, right? And so it's eating up a lot of valuable real estate here. So there are companies now investing in this, and there's big money being invested in this, so they believe it's viable. Now, I'm not ready to say that I would put a retiree's money invested in this, but it's pretty unique to start to think about how far out these things are coming to fruition. And with space travel becoming 30 times cheaper in the last 5 years, 30 times cheaper, Chip, in the last 5 years, this is becoming a reality. And of course, you have Blue Origin and SpaceX, et cetera, all these private companies privatizing space travel and making it much, much more affordable. So this could be a very near-term reality.
Well, I have this goofy grin on my face because I'm thinking of the people who ride bikes and mountains to get outdated information and data, in government systems.
Yeah,
and now we're talking about super sophisticated stuff based on the moon. Okay.
How's my portfolio doing? We're going to the moon.
Okay. All right. Hey, now back here at home. So here's the CNBC headline. Ferrero to buy cereal maker WK Kellogg for $3.1 billion. Kellogg shares jump 30%. Well, of course, we've got a big Kellogg's factory here locally, so this is going to affect quite a few people. David, I understand. So somebody buys something. Oh, somebody's interested in it. I could see that nudging up the value of shares. I don't know, 5 or 10%, 30%. What accounts for that?
That's actually pretty common when you buy out. You have to pay a premium if you're going to take a company private to entice the shareholders to vote yes, because the shareholders ultimately get the vote and say, no, we don't want that. But most people, hey, I'll give you 30% more than your share is currently worth if you give it to me. Most people are going to say, okay, I'll take that deal. So they have to put that where the board would vote in favor of it. And it's not the highest that Kellogg's has traded just 5 or 6 years ago. But Kellogg's as many manufacturers based in the U.S. did, fell on some hard times. And in fact, our plant here has been winding down. They announced the closure last year and affecting about 400 employees here in Omaha. So the restructuring here, they've gotten some of their costs in line. So a private company thinks that they can go further enhance some cost cuts, get efficiencies within the program. A conglomerate buys them make more money. And typically when you see that happen is they'll spin that off to another company 5 to 7 years out, or they will bring them back to the public markets and take them public again at a higher multiple than they currently took them private, grow their sales, etc. But cereal in general has been on the downflow for a while. In fact, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. There's a satire movie Jerry Seinfeld wrote and produced and stars in, and it takes place in Battle Creek, Michigan, which is where, it's kind of like Kellogg's and Post. It's Jim Gaffigan. It's kind of a strange movie,
I haven't seen
but they invent the Pop-Tart and basically, wait a minute. Cereal's got a competitor. It's pretty funny if you haven't seen it. Yeah, I think you can enjoy some of the satire in it. But anyway, and they give away cereal awards. They come up with their own awards. Anyway, but cereal is on the down. I mean, my kids don't eat cereal. Like, I grew up eating cereal. I mean, my brother Luke could testify. Once wrestling season's over, I didn't have to make weight. I eat a box a whole box every morning. So but the eating habits have changed significantly in this country. And we didn't eat breakfast like this, though. By the way, go back 60 years ago. Cereal, orange juice, none of that was part of the normal breakfast. Americans didn't eat breakfast. They ate leftovers if they did from the dinner the night before, not what we consider traditional breakfast today.
So how about for Kellogg's employees here? Do they have, is share a holding in the company likely be part of their compensation? So would they get a boost from this?
Well, so the share price jumps when the announcement offered. I don't have the article right in front of me at this moment, but the share price they're going to be taking out has already been negotiated. So if the board votes, that's what they'll get per share. What they need to understand is that will be if they own this in a non-qualified account, if they own this outright, or if they have what's called restricted stock units, which is RSUs. A lot of companies use this. This will become a taxable event, and they need to do some tax planning because while it could be a windfall, it could also bump them into an additional tax bracket they may not be prepared for. So if you work for Kellogg's and you have the stock and you need help, folks, just give us a call. Literally, no obligation. We're happy to set you up with one of our fiduciary-based advisors for a phone call to explain all your options to you.
David, you sent this headline around. This is from CNBC. ASML is a major chip maker. ASML shares dropped 6.5% after the chip giant says it can't confirm that it will grow in 2026. Boy, I thought if you made chips these days, we're talking about, of course, microcomputer chips, you couldn't lose, I thought, in this market.
This is perhaps the most important tech company that most people have never heard of. So you have to understand is they don't make the chips. They make what the chips do possible. So they do what they call lithography or whatever, lipography, excuse me. But basically they use light to engrave the silicon chips they increase the capacity of these chips, like 200-fold. And that's what makes these super semiconductors and chips so powerful. They're a Dutch-based company, so they're not a Silicon Valley company, and they're not a Far East company. They are actually they're Dutch. And huge company. They have these massive machines that laser edge these light into the chips that make them able to hold the capacity that they can have. And without them, Samsungs and NVIDIAs of the world would struggle to create the capacity of their chips. And
so the chip is just raw material, and ASML enhances it.
Correct.
So
but there's other companies that try and do something similar, but they have a patent on their specific way of doing it, and they're by far, in a way, the best. They have this special machine that does that. They can't manufacture enough of those machines, so they get to capacity. Therefore, they can't grow. And if they can't grow, then how are they going to grow their earnings? They've been a very important company in tech world, but if they're at capacity, that may be a headwind downstream for Texas Instruments, Samsung, all these companies that are hiring them to produce chips in their goods and services. So that's why I just thought this was really important, that this could be a red flag if they don't have the infrastructure to come online and capacitize. Now, maybe there's something to be done here. Trump's trying to onshore more important manufacturing jobs. Hey, ASML, do you want to build some more of your machines right here in the wonderful United States in a tax incentivized deal? I bet that would make a lot of people smile. So we'll see. But it's interesting. Companies usually don't forecast, hey, we're not going to grow. And just as the article appears, the stock had hit 6.5%. It was down over 9% like an hour after that article came out.
So the red flag here is what this really means is Apple, NVIDIA, Intel, the people who demand what ASML offers are slacking off. They're not asking for as much. That's why ASML is thinking,
or they're stuck at capacity and just can't meet the demand, right? And so that would slow down the development of chips and new products, robotics, all kinds of things. So there's some ripple effects, and we'll come back to this in a couple of months, and we'll see what comes out of this.
ASML said it shipped one high NA tool in the second quarter. I don't know this industry, but that doesn't sound good. So,
No.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we'll keep an eye on that. See if we can squeeze this one in, David. Is this just candy, or is this a real thing? This is townhall.com. Trump floats eliminating capital gains tax. I guess we're talking about real estate transactions here. Is this Trump just stream of consciousness, or do you think this is something that might happen?
Well, I mean, I know he really would like to do it. He really wants to eliminate property taxes nationwide, he said before, too. But he does, from the cuff, kind of throw these things out. But I will tell you, I have learned that everything he does that seems from the cuff, they have vetted the idea behind the scenes. And he likes to spring it on you almost like it's his fresh idea of the day. The reality is, though, where do you make up the revenue from it? And in this particular article is talking on your house, right? So when you sell your house, one of the things that a lot of our seniors do is as they've upgraded homes going into retirement and they want to downsize, there's exemptions when it's your personal residence. But we have some people that want to sell the house and not buy a house. I just want to rent in retirement. And renting is like 48% cheaper than owning right now. So that makes a lot of sense for a lot of retirees. But if they don't repurchase a house, do they have to pay capital gains tax, et cetera? So I'm always in favor of cutting taxes anywhere, anytime. So, we'll see. But the chance of it being reality at this point, slim and none with what just got passed this year, at least in my humble opinion.
That'll do it for this week, folks. Please visit our website, retiresmartnow.com, and click Attend an Event at the top of the page to see everything we currently offer, including the Psychology of Retirement in Lincoln. No charge, no obligation for our events, but you do need to register. You can do it online or by calling 402-369-7777. David, bring us home.
Hey, have a blessed and prosperous week. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. For David Brooks and the entire team at Retire Smart, have a great week. Tom Osborne and teammates are not clients of Retire Smart and were compensated for this sponsorship endorsement as such term is defined under SEC Rule 206 subsection 4-1. For further information about this sponsorship and the compensation details, visit retiresmartnow.com and click on the Sponsorships tab. The University of Nebraska and University of Nebraska Athletics, also known as Nebraska Cornhuskers, are not clients of Smart Wealth LLC or Retire Smart LLC. Playfly Sports Properties, on behalf of the Nebraska Cornhuskers, was compensated for this endorsement as such term is defined under SEC Rule 206 subsection 4-1. For further information about this sponsorship and the compensation details, visit retiresmartnow.com and click on the Sponsorships tab.